Hey, Chicago, what do you say? It's the CHGO Cubs podcast presented by DraftKings. That's right, America's top-rated sportsbook. Use that promo code CHGO when you sign up, and we are 4 wide for a Tuesday afternoon podcast, 1:20 always, live on YouTube, or if you're listening on the podcast, we enjoy that too. Hello to everybody in the chat, Luke Stuckmeyer, Ryan Herrera, Michael Cerami, don't call him Cerami, please, and Cody Delmendo. We got Bleacher Nation in the house. Good to have you, man.
Hey, thanks. I'm glad to be here. I've been waiting to come on the show.
You're not Brian.
I'm not Brian.
Had Brian a couple times.
Brian he's the man. That guy knows his stuff.
Oh,
Yeah. Well, you know your stuff. What are you talking about?
Yeah, well, just because I take what he writes and I changed the author name.
The last few days the last few shows we've thrown out the hint for you, and I've said every time that we have a huge Ian Happ fan on the show. Like, I always enjoy your Ian Happ tweets.
Yeah, okay. I feel vindicated after years of promoting Ian Happ as the guy he was this year, that it just took this season. He, put him in left field, let him do his thing, and he hit from both sides of the plate, hit for enough power in the second half, and all-star, Gold Club recognition.
Mm-hmm.
I felt really good about it. I felt like a proud papa in a way.
Yeah.
But you are a proud papa, too.
I am now a proud papa for real. I had a baby son little less than a month ago, October 4th.
That's awesome.
His name's Leo. He's doing great.
See, so 2 out of 4 people on the panel today are exhausted. That's
right.
the way.
I'm exhausted for other reasons.
Yeah. Out all night and gambling. Yeah, right.
I had
That'll wear you out. You want to parlay.
Monday. I had a great Monday. Yeah, I won a parlay. I didn't lose a bet on Monday Night Football. It was awesome. You celebrate these moments.
Yeah, I was out fighting crime all night. So.
Oh, sorry, Batman. Yes, I forgot that Batman was out.
Eating and drinking justice, yeah.
Eating and drinking justice, of course. Now I'm back to Bruce.
And we went from superheroes, we went back to our CHO swag. The dope merch, of course.
Dope merch.
Sick trip. Get those new sweatshirts. The Bulls and Bears
I still have
Oh,
to get those.
I got the camo one.
I got the Bulls one last night. I was laying in bed, couldn't sleep, and I was like, I haven't got this yet. I'm going to buy this.
Were you guys disappointed? No World Series game last night? I wasn't. It was Halloween. It was kind of like, I'm cool.
Yeah, I was. It's my mom's birthday is Halloween, and mine's the 29th. It's a couple days ago. Happy birthday. So we were double celebrating last night, and I was like, I'm going to have to come home after the party, start the game over, or start from the beginning for the podcast. But now I'm good. We have nothing. I didn't miss anything.
There you go.
Yeah, I'll pick it up. We'll see what happens. We've talked about the whole Schwarber thing, Castellanos, Dusty. If you had to root for somebody or not root for somebody, what would your path be on that? We're kind of all different on it.
Yeah, so I don't have a ton of hate for the Astros the way I did, but a couple years ago. It just kind of has waned a little bit. But I want the Phillies to win. I am a big Kyle Schwarber fan. I was a big Bryce Harper fan. Big Nick Castellanos fan. What's his name? This is the dad brain Cubs closer.
David Robertson.
David Robertson. I liked him. I thought he was great. I also thought he was hilarious. Around July when he was already, I'm going to be traded. Just forecasting it, just hoping it gets to the right team. I want to see him do well. Phillies fans are insane, so that's kind of fun. I'm all about the Phillies, and it's not the Astro hate thing that I think is kind of. I think it's died down a little bit.
I think I'm the only one on this whole show right now that's on the Astro side of it. I just want Dusty to win a ring. I think he deserves it as manager. 30 years.
I'm okay with the Dusty part of it.
You have been on the Astros since the postseason started.
Yeah.
I flipped to the Astros when we learned he was going to be in the World Series. So
it's just about Dusty. I like Dusty. I think he's a good manager, and I think when you spend 30 years in the game, because he won as a player, of course, but when you spend 30 years managing and not winning a World Series, you get to a point where you deserve it, especially when it's like the Astros are rallying around him and they know how much it would mean to him to win a ring. That's kind of the reason why he took that job in Houston after all the sign stealing. That's the whole scandal went down. That okay, well, Dusty Baker is still a good team, still a team that had just been to the NLCS again the last year, or ALCS, sorry, again the last year. It kind of felt like Dusty's like, okay, this is an opportunity to win a ring. It's a job that is going to come with a lot of hate and a lot of heat, but it's also an opportunity to win a ring. So I'm like,
he took a lot of heat when he was in Washington too.
That too. Yeah, I mean, he took heat everywhere.
I forgot he was even there.
He took heat everywhere he went. Cincinnati.
Like he took a lot of heat
Chicago,
whenever the
of course.
Cubs won in 2017, beat them. And maybe before Game 5, maybe he deserved some criticism, but like, I don't know, man. I think that game went perfectly for the Nationals. They just didn't win that game.
I think the Cubs got extremely lucky that game.
Yeah,
that inning
for
Scherzer
sure.
came in.
Yes.
It was like it couldn't have been. It was like Cardinals voodoo magic, but we got it. And then it all just went away, and then LCS. But I remember that. I don't know. Dusty has been. I think I sort of got to a point where I put him in my rearview mirror, like after the Cubs, even though he has been around the game longer since then. And when the Astros hired him, it sort of felt like, and I think the Astros are a smart organization. Setting aside the sign stealing, they're still successful. They have a ton of great player development. When they hired him, it sort of felt like I needed to. I was like offended that I needed to like reassess what I thought was the right type of manager, because I would have been like, well, I'm never hiring Dusty Baker in 2019, whatever it was that he jumped ship, 2020 maybe.
Yeah.
And so then I was sort of stuck, and I was like, okay, so we got the Cubs went this younger route with David Ross, inexperienced, plenty of experience in the game, inexperienced manager, didn't coach in the minors or anything like that. He really fits the mold of like being able to translate the newer side of baseball to the players, a lot of things that a lot of smart organizations are doing. And the Astros go and hire Dusty. And I was mentally like pairing it with like the Sox getting La Russa. I was kind of like, what are they doing? Like that's dumb. And then it worked out, and now I'm kind of like, well, am I dumb? Like, I think that's what I'm kind of like. I want him to lose, because I'm like, I want to save a little bit of.
I think Dusty's a good players manager, though. I feel like that's kind of been his thing, and that's why he's been able to transition with how the game has changed over the years, while La Russa didn't manage for like a decade.
Yeah.
That's true. But you know what I think it is really? It's whatever that particular group of guys needs. Like Joe Madden was the right guy at the right time. Would he be right for this group? I don't know. Would he be right for the White Sox right now? I don't know. But that's what each team has to identify. What type of manager do you need? And usually they flip back and forth. It's no different than football, right? Like, oh, we need a defensive coach this time. No, we need No, what you need is a good coach, and he needs to somehow preach to these teams and these players what they happen to need at that time and in the stage they're at in their careers.
Yeah, and that's another thing when you mentioned how the Astros are still a good organization, sign stealing scandal aside. Like, the Sox made a bad choice picking Tony La Russa. Mm-hmm. The Astros obviously did their homework and picked Dusty Baker, and it was weird at the time. Everyone, like, universally, like, it was like, is this the right move? It turned out that it was just because he's, like Cody said, a player's coach and a guy that these guys can rally around, but also knows the ins and outs of the game, can also, has been around so many different cultures playing in his time in baseball that he can connect with every single one of those players on that team. That I think there was so many guys that, Bregman and Altuve are obviously still there, but then Correa, Verlander, like all these guys that knew how to win already, they didn't need him to like help guide them to winning. He needed a manager that let them be themselves, let them play how they play, but also younger guys like your Framber Valdez's of the world. Also, as they come up, he can connect with them on a level that helps guide them to championship level baseball, while these other players already know how to do that. And I think that's what.
But setting aside whether it worked out or not, I think you're right about all that. The part I forgot to mention. Do you think at the time they thought that was the reason they thought all of that, and that's why they hired him? Or was he like a known quantity stabilizing presence in the middle of their giant scandal? And it was like 50% distraction, 50%. No one's going to question Dusty because it's Dusty. Yeah. And like, that feels like it's like they were rewarded for the wrong reasons. Like maybe all those other things were true,
worked out,
but it doesn't feel like that's why they actually did hire him at the time. It really felt like it was, here's another distraction, like another way we can be like, oh, look over here, it's Dusty Baker. Like,
and you bring some goodwill with Dusty Baker.
Yeah,
as well.
exactly.
That's true.
And against like La Russa, the difference is Tony La Russa was gone from the game for like 10 years. Dusty's been in it, like competing.
What, he didn't manage for like a year, maybe? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Was it like in between Reds and Nationals, maybe? Or was it after Nationals, like a year in that whole decade that he didn't manage? So, but yeah, no, I agree with that too. I do remember at the time, like, there was a speculation on that. It's like, okay, they brought in Dusty Baker because he's Dusty Baker, not because maybe not as much because he's a guy that can lead them to another World Series, but okay, this is a guy that knows how to answer questions and isn't involved in the sign stealing, and will at least bring some goodwill and positivity because people like Dusty Baker.
We're not cheating. In Dusty, you can trusty. That's what they were really thinking. All right, how do we get the Cubs back to the World Series? That's what we really want to know. Like,
this is
great
a Cubs show, right? Yeah.
This is a Cubs show. Kodai Senga, officially a free agent, 30 years old. What do you like about this possibility in free agency for the Cubs? Because I think most people, if you have a wish list, right, for what the Cubs need this offseason, and it's been delayed potentially by this rain delay yesterday, just a little bit, right? A starting pitcher, at least one of them is on that list. At least one, because of what Kyle Hendricks has gone through, and just needing another frontline starter. I don't know enough about him other than I like 96 for a fastball. I like some of the things I've seen. He's 30. He fits in that target range that it's not, you don't have to teach him from the very beginning. And he's been very successful. You just don't know how it translates. What do you like about this guy as a possibility for the Cubs in free agency?
Yeah, so I like him a lot. I think the Cubs need 2 starting pitchers this offseason, and I think Senga is the kind of guy you can go out and get early who might project to the middle of your rotation that gives you some grace to go big game hunting for your top of the rotation starter, whoever it may be. Carlos Rodon is a pretty interesting option, has some drawbacks, but there's other guys out there too. If you get Senga, you have another guy that's like, this is a guy that most likely will fit into the middle of rotation 3, 4 and extend it a lot. What I like about him the most, I think, is he's got 4 big league quality pitches, 3 of which are considered plus. The one that's not is his 96-mile-an-hour fastball. So if that's your worst pitch, then you're starting from a pretty good foundation, especially with what I perceived to be a pretty improved pitching development infrastructure with the Cubs. His forkball, it's also called a splitter, is awesome. I mean, it is absolutely devastating. If you go back and look at some clips when he deployed it in the World Baseball Classic a few years ago, it was like, oh, that's a big league caliber wipeout pitch. And so although you wouldn't ever want this to be the case, with 4 pitches, 3 of them are plus and 1 like that and 96-mile-an-hour fastball, you have at minimum a floor of a guy who could be one of those impact multi-inning relievers if it absolutely doesn't work out. And I'm saying that like in the worst case scenario. Like, I think he will be a good starting pitcher, not a top of the rotation guy, but a good one. And if for some reason the translation to the United States doesn't quite work, which is, we got to be honest, it's not a sure thing. It doesn't always work like that. If it doesn't work, then you have a guy that is still going to be able to contribute. And I don't think he's not going to be prohibitively expensive, in part because he's had some injury issues in the past, in part because he's coming over from a different league. But also because he is not, unlike, say, a Suzuki, he's not going to require a posting fee. He's just a true free agent. So you can have him immediately, no posting fee. That was about 15 million for Seiya. And also no comp pick, he's not attached to a qualifying offer. So unlike Carlos Rodon, who you have to give up your second-round pick, some IFA money, bonus pool space in the draft, you get Senga for just the money you give him. And if there's anything this Cubs team should be doing right now is taking chances when they require only money. There's nothing else they're giving up. So if you get a middle rotation guy who's got a little bit of upside but a solid enough floor for only money, and he can set you up for bigger swings in free agency, that's kind of a perfect storm from where I stand.
And it's not our money. That's the best part. Somebody else's.
Yeah, well, they win that Powerball. They have plenty of money to spend.
That's what I'm saying. Powerball's 1.3 bildo at this point. It rolled over. I had 2 tickets last night, by the way. So if you won the $1.3 billion, and let's say you have to give some of it to making the Cubs a better team to go into the World Series, how much of it would you spend on a player? Or what would you spend? Let's say Tom Ricketts wins the $1.3 billion. What should he spend?
Does he need it? Does he need it?
What should the wish list be for?
I think we'd all be pretty mad if he's the one who wins it. But
if I got $1.3 billion,
if he were to win that and then this roster doesn't improve, people will be rioting.
That's right. You're right. They would. I don't know. $1.3 billion can buy a lot of stuff.
Yeah,
a lot of stuff. I just think. me, I'll say it 1,000 times. I'd get in the bidding war for Aaron Judge.
Yeah.
I personally would, but I know not everybody's in on that.
Right. What do you project him, like Senga, like the type of contract that he will get?
Sure. I mean, so listen, there's better people out there than me to do this sort of projection, but I have a general sense. I think it's probably going to be in that $60 to $80 million range.
Okay.
I don't see it being much more. I could see it being less because there was a new scouting report out that just came out on him recently, and it kind of shined a little bit more light on some of his injuries in the past. And I don't have any information on the significance of those injuries. So that could impact it a little bit, and so I'm not quite sure. But I think he might be in that $60, $80 million range. And for a 30-year-old starting pitcher, that's totally fine, especially when you have Justin Steele and Marcus Stroman already in the rotation. That's a pretty solid floor for the Cubs, and they're not overspending on the rotation. And in fact, we think they should go out and spend more on a more expensive, better pitcher. I know Brat, my partner at Bleacher Nation, is really, really into the Jacob deGrom idea. I don't think it's particularly likely, but I do see. I don't think deGrom's going to want the Cubs. Is going to be the problem. I think it's in a lot of weird ways he does fit the financial terms that Jed Hoyer likes to play on, which is he is all in on short-term deals. He does not care. This is going to sound like heresy to some Cubs fans listening. He is not a guy that cares about the overall dollars going in the deal. It's way more about the length of these deals. So when you're looking at deGrom, who's going to try to fit the mold of the Max Scherzer deal, is the general rumor, something along those lines. I actually do think that's a thing that could work out for the Cubs, not only because they have the short-term dollars available and potentially another year or two where there's some of these players are going to be coming up, but also because they have so many young pitching prospects coming up through the system where your rotation might be top-heavy in financial resources in 2 years, but then it'll swing back the other way when these rookie pitchers are coming up on their pre-arb deals. So I could see deGrom being the type of guy that makes sense too, just because unlike Rodon, who might want 5-6 years, that's the type of deal that Jed Hoyer seems to prefer.
I mean, both guys, whether it's Senga or deGrom, you get some injury history there. I saw
Rodon comes with.
But Senga was elbow tightness was one of the injuries at some point, right?
And like ankle, and then there was one other thing.
I mean, the elbow tightness would be the one that really would be like, let's keep an eye on it. But every pitcher is going to have something. You can't find a pitcher that doesn't have some sort of ache or pain throughout a season where they have something going on. The concern would be that you have somebody like Kyle Hendricks who you just have no idea what to expect, although the reports so far have been positive about what he's been trying to rebuild. I
got a super chat. Yeah. Fernando Rodriguez, $1.99, says, hello, crew. Go Cubs. That's all.
Thanks,
all right.
Fernando.
Hell yeah.
I love it.
Appreciate you, man.
Fernando. Wasn't there Fernando Rodriguez that pitched in the major? I'm thinking of, who am I thinking of?
Fernando Valenzuela?
No, I think it's another.
Oh, Fernando Tatis.
No. What was K-Rod's first name?
K-Rod?
He wasn't Fernando,
Frankie.
was it? Was it Francisco?
Francisco Rodriguez.
Okay,
You got me
Close
once you
enough.
said it, then I was like, wait, no, it was Fernando. No.
Yeah, close enough. But yeah, thank you for the super chat.
But anyway,
I was gonna say you got the $1.3 billion if it's Jacob deGrom.
Well, yeah. Wait,
money
first of all, it's
talks.
$1.3 billion. You sign all of the guys.
Right. I mean, I get us nicer chairs here for sure.
That's right.
yeah, seriously.
Leather.
You could $1.3 billion. You could almost afford 3 Juan Sotos, I guess, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's not even 3 of
No.
them. Almost.
What do you? Speaking of Juan Soto, what about Shohei? You think the Cubs could actually be in on someone like that?
So, yeah, that's obviously going to come down to the Angels' willingness to trade him. And it's weird because in some ways I want to be like, well, we have no idea how that's going to play out. But in other ways, it literally just happened with the Nationals. They're selling Juan Soto as their big, giant, marketable player. The problem is Shohei Ohtani has even more marketability and revenue-generating capabilities than Juan Soto. And so he has like a pretty direct impact on the value of the Angels in a real way. So I'm not certain, unlike the case with the Nationals and Soto, that the Angels will be so willing to move on. frankly, it seems pretty smart that they should.
Yeah.
But part of that is probably being animated by the fact that I want the Cubs to go after him. And I do think that if he is actually
we all
available, I do think the Cubs could be involved. But I also think that injuries to Brennan Davis, Alexander Canario, Miguel Amaya, Braylon Marquez had a slow year. It's like those are kind of going to impact and limit the Cubs' flexibility to make some trades, especially because a lot of those guys were like near-term big ready pieces where their value is a little outsized to their prospect status. And so, it's just going to be a little bit more difficult for the Cubs to pull off a trade like that. That said, I still do think they could. We also know Ohtani liked Chicago. Chicago's one of the finalists when he first came over, the only non-West Coast finalist at the time.
Yep.
And so presuming there would be an extension discussion before any trade was completed, that might be something that can get over the hump. And that also works in the Cubs' favor because if they're only going to do a trade, if any team that would trade for him would only trade for him if he would extend, then they're going to have to find a team that Ohtani would be willing to extend with. So it's not like a no trade clause, but it kind of could work in a similar way.
Yeah.
So I think it's possible that they make him available, and I think it's possible that the Cubs become interested, and I think it's possible that they have enough to get it done. But when we start multiplying the probabilities, it starts getting pretty low.
Yeah, I think it's possible I win the Powerball. I keep telling myself
You're saying
that.
there's a chance.
Yeah, there's a shot.
I was just the meme version of that in real life.
So you're saying there's a chance. Yeah, I mean, we talked about it extensively about like what the type of package it would be to get a guy like that. And I've been someone who thinks that the Cubs would just have to send a bunch of guys on the farm. And those guys have said you'd probably have to do that and send a major league player. Where does that, where do you think if the Angels were to actually do that to trade him to whoever team, like, are you think they're going to demand more prospects, or are they going to want a major league guy who's proven ready to go?
The guy we talked about was Nico. We said they would never do the trade without Nico.
Here's a better question, as Tice says Cody. Cody doesn't think the Cubs would have to trade Nico to get Shohei. Me and Luke were on the other side.
But I do get his part where he says they're running out of time to do it. Like,
yeah. So those are, I love the context of this question. So I think, first of all, I've seen some people suggest that it'll cost more to trade for Ohtani than it would for Soto, and I think that's completely incorrect. I think the Soto trade is the ceiling, so you could start to work backwards from there. But I think any trade for a guy like Ohtani is necessarily going to have to include at least one big league ready piece or existing big leaguer. Again, that's sort of where I was going with my last point, whereas if Brennan Davis had come up last year and was already playing and had some success, and it was like, well, is he a prospect or is he a big leaguer? It's kind of doesn't really change, I do think Nico Horner is the tier of talent that we might be thinking, but frankly, I think right now Justin Steele has the most trade value on the Cubs and might be the type of guy that if any big, huge trade, like something for Shohei Ohtani, not a still impressive, solid, exciting trade, I don't know, Shane Bieber or something, you're not going to include Justin Steele in that, but if it was for something like that, I think Justin Steele is the kind of guy that people are going to ask about a little bit more than what other people are realizing. Nico had a great season. He was awesome, and he looks like he's going to be awesome. But he's also already arbitration eligible, 3 years more of control only. He's had a ton of injuries in the past, some fluky, some chronic. I mean, they just have been. You can't just look over that. That's going to be part of the calculus. So there's no question that he has a lot of trade value, but I think going through that process of coming up with trade packages for Juan Soto at the trade deadline in my head, like what would it do? What would it take? I think Nico has more value to the Cubs than he would in a trade to another team. I also think we're probably within months of the Cubs extending him. That's not me reporting anything. I have no information. I have a very strong sense that that's where they're headed, that they're going to extend him, and I don't think he's going to be part of any trade in the near term anyway, even if his name came up. I just think that the Cubs plan on building around him.
Yeah, and one I do know, like especially at Jed's end of season press conference, kind of asked about in-house extensions and specifically about guys like Nico and Ian Happ, and that that's kind of obviously one of the issues and the criticisms that they faced this last time around, not being able to extend really anyone. I mean, Rizzo got it a while back, Kyle got it in 2019, I think, but other than that, nothing else happened. And Jed has talked about wanting to, looking into that kind of stuff, trying to get some of those across the finish line, like they didn't, unlike they did. I don't know what I'm trying to say here. They didn't do that last time.
Yeah,
there you
gotcha.
go. And talking to him and seeing how, how much the front office values Nico and the coaching staff, how much they value Nico, and even the rest of the players, how much they value Nico. I would assume that of all the guys, especially arbitration eligible guys, I know there's a couple guys a few years away, but like Nico heading into this year, like that's probably the priority number one is to extend Nico.
Yeah.
Above anyone else.
I think it is. I also feel so the Ian Happ extension conversation is a tricky one, and in part because of the prospects that are percolating up through the system. PCA is going to start at AA. Canario and Davis are going to be at AAA to start the year. Well, Canario won't.
We hope at some point.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I think if I know someone who works in a different major league, the medical side of things, and from the outside with no inside information at all, just like the nature of the injury, it was like it's like going to be an all-star break thing if everything goes well, just because of the nature of both surgeries. That's just, again, not specific to him because he's not with the Cubs, but that type of injury, that type of rehab, that type of surgery, both surgeries. Anyway, Brendan Davis has been dealing with injuries. So NPCA, yeah, maybe he comes up at some point next year if everything goes perfectly well. When you look at Ian Happ, he's already under control for next year. So had he been a free agent, I think there would be a lot more urgency this past spring and this season to get something done to cover the Cubs for next year. Now it's like, even though those guys are all injured, Happ is already going to be around for next year. So if they wanted to instead go and get a Brandon Nimmo in free agency or something, I think that I just think that a Happ extension isn't going to be the priority. But I feel like they've been, and the whole point of this is I feel like the Cubs have been sort of implying that it is going to be part of the offseason agenda. Like they're finally going to get to a place where they can talk about an extension with Happ. And I think just from his public comments, we all can tell that Happ would be happy to stay in Chicago.
Yeah.
I mean, he's made that pretty clear. He had a great season. He created a new baseline by completely transforming what type of player he is, especially offensively, but also in left field. So it seems like the Cubs should be willing to extend him, given all those other factors, the people getting injured. But I don't think they're going to, because I think they're going to say, we already got him for next year. See you later. After that, we're gonna sign somebody and let the prospects come up naturally. I think it's a little bit of a risk, but I think that's where they're headed.
Yeah.
I like the Nimmo thought, because he was like, the Cubs were like, it was like in the middle of the year. I remember Heyman had like a rumor or whatever. I know that's iffy sometimes, but like he said something about how the Cubs were interested in him, and like I do like the type of player he is, and they need a type of guy like that who, because you can't rely on a guy like Brennan Davis and obviously not Canario now. Like you don't want to go into next year hoping that a prospect is going to be able to carry you for a full year. You got to have a backup plan. I think that he'd be a really solid one. Plus, he's proven, and he'd be a good vet for some of the young guys too. So I like that idea of someone like him. That's not someone I'd really been thinking about lately.
You don't need Nimmo if you've got Judge.
Fair.
Come on now.
Fair.
Stick with me.
Yeah,
That's the other.
Judge.
That's the other thing.
That's actually one of our comments.
He's gonna have a long. He's gonna require a long contract, and the Cubs are just not gonna give it to him.
No,
You know what I mean? Like,
well, that is.
I think that's of all the plans we're putting out there and spitballing ideas. I think Judge is the most unlikely,
the
and
longest of
Ohtani
shots.
is number 2.
Yeah,
I do like the idea of if the Dodgers are full in on Aaron Judge, then perhaps they won't sign Trey Turner or tender Cody Bellinger a contract. And I saw your article that you wrote at Bleacher Nation about the idea of Cody Bellinger with the Cubs, and we talked about that last week. I think that is more – I think that there's actual likelihood of that happening, whether it's one of them or – hell, both of them would be cool. You know what I mean?
I like the possibility, though, because of these injuries. Like, he gives you some flexibility to play some different positions, too.
well,
Sure.
Cody Bellinger.
Yes, Cody Bellinger.
Yeah, I mean, what do the Cubs need? They need a center fielder. They need left-handed power. They need a first baseman. possibly. And in some combination, there's prospects coming up through the system that could cover both center and first. You don't know which one of them is going to arrive first, which one of them is going to work out. And the Cubs need left-handed pop in any case. Well, query whether Bellinger still has left-handed pop. Maybe he doesn't. Maybe he does. But if you sign him, you kind of have a lot of flexibility for Mervis to arrive sort of at his own pace and take over first at his own pace, maybe play some DH. Bellinger can play some DH if it's needed. Otherwise, you stick him in center where the Cubs don't really have a lot of options. Chris Morel is, I think he's a pretty big question mark. I think he's certainly going to have value in some capacity, role player in some capacity, whether he's like a blue chip surefire starter. I don't think anyone can say that for sure yet. Maybe. And at third base, you also have Patrick Wisdom. It's just like a bunch of like mediocre options, and the Cubs are going to have to add 2 bats. We hope one of them is one of the 4 shortstops, but you still need to add another guy. So that's why I like Brandon Nimmo, because I think he's kind of fills the box that Bellinger might, but just at one position, but at a much higher level, like a much more certain level. He's a legitimate second bat to add to the lineup. And again, I feel like a lot of times we forget that the Cubs aren't just, if they add 1 bat, they've added 0 bats because they've lost Contreras.
Right.
Yeah.
So you need to add 2 bats so that you're replacing Contreras' production offensively and then adding another offensive weapon to the team and hope that anything that happens on the prospect side is gravy on top. That's got to be the part that'll be the difference between whether they win the division and go into the playoffs or, end up in that 83, 84, 85 win range, which is, whatever. But
Certainly possible.
yeah. Right. So I think you got to hope that the prospects push you over the top and put yourself in a position to be at 85 from day one. You know what I mean? And I think Nimmo is a little bit more of a sure thing.
Yeah.
But Bellinger is a cheaper route, gives you some flexibility. And if it allows you, if by signing Bellinger to a cheaper deal allows you to go get Jacob deGrom and Senga or Carlos Rodon and Senga, okay, then we could talk about that. But it's got to be one or the other. They need to be adding multiple pieces on both sides of the baseball.
Yeah.
And who knows, maybe Bellinger, I don't know, figures it out. Maybe that changes scenery.
That's what intrigues me so much about him, that he was so good.
Wasn't
the
that
first
long
3
ago?
years.
The sample size is just as big that he was great as it is for
so good
he was,
isn't even like putting it
like
fully.
MVP
I mean, he was
caliber
great.
player.
He was
like,
an MVP.
Yeah.
And I read this. I don't even remember where it was now. So maybe I can, after the show, find the article and tweet it out. So I'm not just, aping someone's point. There was this deep dive on Bellinger's mechanics at the plate and how it wasn't the shoulder injury. It was like his lower half and how he tweaked his swing just like slightly to take pressure off of his ankle. And if his ankle is fully healed now, and this sort of issue has been more correctly identified, there's like a real chance that the tweaks he made to his swing, which reduced his bat speed and thus his power, his loft a little bit as well, could be corrected, and he could pretty quickly become himself again. He's only 27.
Right.
Is the Cubs' new hitting coach, was he there at the beginning of Bellinger's success? Or was he there for the switch? That's what I'm curious where that timeline
spent, 3
lines
years?
up, because if he had success with him as an instructor, then I look at it and go, well, wait a minute. Now it makes him even more likely.
That's a really good
That,
point.
you know what I mean? Then the Cubs are looking at it and saying, like, we know how to fix him. We've got the guy, and we just made him our hitting coach.
Well, because he spent the last 2 years Cubs minor league hitting coordinator, and I think the 3 or 4 years prior to that he was with LA,
Which is when he was hitting and an MVP.
Yeah. So
you guys might have just stumbled onto something there.
Anyway, we're talking with Michael Cerami from Bleacher Nation. We'll get back to that in a second. Greenridge Farm, a Chicago local meat and cheese company offering you a better all-natural option. Makers of all-natural deli meat sausages and their famous meat sticks. Perfect for tailgating, happy hour, and school lunches. These all-natural meat sticks are hardwood smoked for 8 hours. 16 grams of protein per stick, making a perfect post-workout snack. Meat sticks come in chicken, black forest beef, flavors like jalapeno cheddar and spicy chili. If you haven't tried them, you don't know what you're missing. Delicious because they're made from recipes generations in the making, and being all natural, they deliver a fresh and flavorful alternative at snack time. You can always find them in the refrigerated section at Costco, Sam's Club, or your Chicagoland grocery stores. And right now, when you order any 3 meat products at greenridgefarm.com, include a pack of meat sticks in your cart, and those meat sticks are free simply by using the code CHGO at checkout. Green Ridge Farm, simply natural meat. And by the way, we will be serving Green Ridge Farm meat sticks and meat at our tailgate on Sunday.
Yeah.
By the way, you should come by for that. It's a great deal.
That sounds awesome.
$46, you'd be our guest.
$46.
All the food you can eat and drink.
And watch the bear
And
or
meat sticks?
Meat sticks,
sticks,
yeah,
yeah.
we're going to be
get
grilling.
yourself ready for
Parking
the
is
over to hit
available.
for Bears Dolphins. Yeah, it's a good time. We had a great first tailgate.
And if you want to take the little guy to his first Bears game,
Yeah, you can use game
you
time.
can use game time.
Use game time.
But you don't have to. You could just come hang out because that's where you have, as a parent with young child, that's where you have to be able to switch the plan, right? So game time gives you the chance, like, oh, I can slip this, and now we could go to the game, or we could pack up, go home, and it's nap
Either
time.
one,
By the way,
like
Sunday now, 65, no clouds.
That's beautiful.
Tailgate
That's
weather.
beautiful.
Oh, it's gonna be
Tailgate
awesome.
weather,
November?
Cody.
How did we get so lucky?
Yeah,
Because we had it was 25 degrees for the first week of October.
Yeah.
Remember that? That sucked.
yeah. Well, again, come to the tailgate, and if you're on the fringe of buying tickets to go to the Bears game, if you download Game Time, it's the perfect app for that situation because if say you just don't know, like
Just last second.
Right.
and then you're at the tailgate, you're vibing with everyone, and next thing you know, all your friends are like, "Let's just go to the game." Like, screw it. Well, Game Time is.
I did
it's
it for
perfect.
the last
That's what
tailgate
you
we
did,
had,
yeah.
the Bears Texans game, like 30 minutes before
Right.
kickoff. Bought tickets and
Absolutely.
went over there.
Yeah, Game Time is the hottest new ticketing site that makes it easier than ever to score the best deals on tickets to sports, concerts, and shows. Ever dreamed of sitting in a seat you never thought you could, 50-yard line courtside, behind home plate, floor seats at a concert? It's possible with the Game Time app. The biggest last-minute price drops can be found on the seats you thought you could never buy. You won't find a better deal this season on Bulls, Blackhawks, Bears tickets. Created by the fans for the fans. Guarantees the lowest price. If you love CHGO, you'll love Game Time. The best way to support us is by buying your tickets through the link in the description, whether you're listening on the podcast feed or on YouTube. Join over 15 million people who have downloaded the Game Time app and scored the best seats to all your favorite events. And again, I bought my tickets to Illinois Northwestern at the end of the month through Game Time, and I got them for less than $30. That was such a good deal that I didn't even want to wait. I was like, I'm getting them now.
Jumped on it.
I jumped on it. Yeah. I
you go.
mean, not that game's going to be that big. And, if they do beat Michigan, they find a way to somehow beat Michigan, maybe those tickets would go up, but I got them now.
We're talking about dreams on the show now.
It's
I
all
am
about
dreaming
dreams.
just a little bit. Don't let me talk myself into it.
Start with the Powerball.
Maybe
Work
they'll
your
just
way
cover.
down.
I'd be happy if they cover against Michigan, honestly.
All right. Mr. Cerami, give me your wish list for shortstop possibilities for next year.
Yeah. So, okay. No. It's
a loaded question.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Right. In a totally understandable way.
Yeah.
Like I get it. So I think, are we saying that contract is included in this calculus? Let's think about it that way. Okay,
Everything. And whether or not someone's going to demand that they actually play short, or do you leave Nico at short, or?
Right. So, and the reason I asked that is because I've been kicking around this idea lately that for the price savings that you get from going from Bogarts to Correa, you can go out and spend it on a pitcher, and maybe you have Bogarts play third, which in my opinion is a pretty wide open spot for the Cubs. I know they have options, but I think it's pretty wide open. So I think he'll be open to playing not short, and I think this satisfies a lot of Cubs fans by allowing Nico to stay at short. I think it provides a little bit more runway for Madrigal at second, which I don't necessarily think is necessary or even certainly part of the plan, but it would be pretty foolish to completely give up on that project so early in the process because he's been hurt so much. Maybe he heals up, maybe he hits better. I don't think I'm a believer, but I could see the whole picture working out in that sense. Otherwise, Correa is my top target. But I get this nagging feeling that Turner is actually the best shortstop available this offseason. And I want to relate it to something that Cubs fans should remember. Back before the 2015 season, there was two pitchers available. I'm going to make some enemies here. John Lester and Max Scherzer were both available, right? And at one point or another, the Cubs were actually connected to both of them. they needed a big time arm. We're going to spend some money. We're going to put, foot to the pedal, metal to the pedal to the metal. What does it say? And obviously, in retrospect, it seems a little bit more clear that the Epstein-Lester relationship drove that decision a little bit, but they were interested in Max Scherzer. And at the time, the entire conversation was built upon this argument. Max Scherzer is going to be the better pitcher for the next 3 years, and John Lester has more longevity. He's going to age more gracefully. In the weird sense, Lester fulfilled every possible dream we could have ever had for that free agent contract, and the Cubs won the World Series. I don't want to change any history, but that was incorrect. Max Scherzer has been the better pitcher, period, full stop. And
don't let Corey listen to this.
I know, but that's one of the people I was thinking about. And so it's like, I love John Lester, maybe one of the greatest signings in Chicago sports history, not whatever. But I'm getting a similar vibe with Turner and Correa right now. Correa's younger, but Turner's a little bit older. Turner relies on his speed a little bit, but I think there's some arguments to be made that in the next 2-3 years, Turner might be, or at least I'm seeing these arguments, he might be the better guy in the next 2-3 years. But Correa's, if you're going to sign to that 7-8 year deal, go for Correa. And it's like, this reminds me of exactly that conversation. And I don't want to fall into the same trap of thinking 7 years ahead instead of the next 3. And then maybe that guy still ends up being good anyway, because Scherzer was better in the short term and the long term. You know what I mean? So I understand when people say Turner. That's that gnawing feeling I have in the back of my head. That's the thing that is the context surrounding it. But I still think Correa is the most likely target. We know the Cubs had interest in him in the past. They reportedly made that offer or considered talking about maybe thinking about sending a text about an offer before the lockout last year. I think that that's the way they're going to go, and I'd be perfectly happy with that. Bogarts is, in my opinion, the way you go if you're going to try to save some money and spend it elsewhere, not Dansby Swanson, who also is great, but I rather Bogarts. Turner, who will be the other more expensive one, is the guy that just I wonder if we're going to let him get away.
I just want to see him go with the player that's going to be the best for the next 3 years. Because I think some of the young guys might end up pushing this player out eventually anyways. And you might not be signing a 7-year guy. You might be signing him for that period of time, but you might end up trading them down the road anyways eventually.
That's where I kind of fall on the same side with you, because I think Correa, in that sense, Correa is probably going to be the better player in the next 3-ish years. I don't know how well Trey Turner would project to moving to third base, whereas Carlos Correa, I think the arm strength, the range, I think he has the ability to, in a couple of years, he's had some injury history. If that for some reason forces him off shortstop, I think he still projects as a really good third baseman. If in that case, and then you have other shortstop prospects who could come up, or Nico could move back over, or however that ends up working out, I think Correa maybe project a little more as a guy that can move off the position whenever it's needed. And I like you said, I think short term and long term, he probably will just end up being the better player. He'll just cost more money.
Is the worst case scenario for this offseason they don't get one of these shortstops?
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Bogarts.
I think it is.
Bogarts stays in Boston. Turner ends up staying in L.A. and maybe Swanson isn't the booby prize or whatever you want to call it, but
never called anything that.
If you get Swanson, it's at least not nothing. But if you miss,
but it would be a swing and a miss.
I mean, if they whiff on all 4 shortstops and then don't get Aaron Judge, then yes.
I don't have a problem with not getting a shortstop if you're getting Ohtani and or Judge or one. Just
but
one
you're
of
just
them.
not going to.
No, that's what I'm saying. So now you have to get one of those 4. Yep. So just know that you're going to overpay. And you're going to overpay.
Well, and especially
think
now
your
that
competition.
The Dodgers are all of a sudden they're in. They want to resign Turner. They don't think they can. If they can't get him, they're in on Correa. That sucks. And the Yankees apparently, if they whiff on Judge, they're also interested.
That's right.
For a second, it seemed like the Cubs were going to have that rare offseason where the Mets have Lindor. They're not going to be in.
They had no competition.
Right. The Rangers signed 2
They've got
shortstops
competition.
Last offseason, but now there's competition. Yeah. So I'm a little worried. I am.
I just think they accept the fact now that whatever this contract it is, it's probably not going to be worth it. I'm not saying, okay, winning the World Series would be worth it, but financially, when you look at numbers, you're like, wow, they paid too much for that. it probably is going to be financially more than you would want to spend out of your own pocket. Just know they're going to have to overspend. That's where they're at right now.
That's what it seems
You're
like.
going to have to make a Soriano-type offer to somebody, and you may look at it at the end and go, it wasn't totally worth it.
Right.
But that's okay.
But see, that's
all
like a
those
great.
contracts
Like
will
if it
be-
ends up as Soriano, that's okay.
Yes.
It's that it's got to be not Hayward.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I think we all collectively kind of, got a little gun shy on these deals because that worked out about as awfully as it could have ever worked out. Because even some of like the bad case long-term big contracts, the guy has 2 or 3 good years or 1 or 2 good years, and then he falls off. Hayward had 0 good years
Right.
the whole time.
Bellinger,
So it's like,
Bellinger
geez,
could be
off
that
what
guy, though.
Based off what he was getting paid.
based off what he was getting paid.
Right.
You're right.
Going into it, you could know that Bellinger might be that guy, but for less money.
But way less, right?
Yeah.
Way,
Yeah,
way
yeah, yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Way less money, but defensively a good guy.
And he's still a lottery ticket. I love lottery ticket players. I don't like dumpster diving. I think there's a very fine line there, and you could sway too far the one way than the other. But a guy who has a chance to recapture something and then be something greater than what you signed him for, Tyler Chatwood, I understood that swing. I mean, when you saw him pitch, the few times he was successful, you were like, geez. I mean, there's obviously a really good pitcher in here. Never worked out. But I way rather try on guys like that over and over than sign far like Jake Arrieta in 2021. Like that was like, this is never gonna work again. This is
Medium floor,
Yeah.
low ceiling.
medium
Chatwood, the
floor,
problem
low
was
ceiling.
they kept
It's-
trying and trying over and over with the same guy.
Yeah.
You can't run into a wall 70 times before you realize that didn't work.
They've done well at like finding those types of lottery tickets though. Not it hasn't gotten them the ceiling of a Jake Arrieta, which is very rare in general. But like, I don't think anyone thought David Robinson was going to be anything, and he got you the Phillies' top pitching prospect, right? And like
that was a home run.
right,
signing.
right,
Yeah.
right. Like and like there
Even
were
Givens.
Givens and like I just feel like it hasn't been to the level of like Arrieta, that trade, but like just dudes that they brought in that they were able to flip to get really significant value for with a lot of potential. Again, potential, that's what you're looking at. But yeah, I mean, Bellinger, it just makes a lot of sense for defense. And then like if that change of scenery always is something. Like if he could just, I'm not even asking for a 7-WAR player. I'm asking for like, if he can give you like a 4-WAR. Like if it turns into
great.
that, like
He was
that's
3.
yeah, like a 3 or a
Right.
4-WAR, like for that, for like, I think that would be like an absolute steal for the Cubs for whether they're going into next year, the quote unquote expectations. So
Yeah, I want to go back to one of these comments, and this more has to do with the shortstops than Cody Bellinger. Chris asks, if/when the Cubs sign one of Correa, Turner, Bogarts, does Nico go to second base? If so, what happens to Madrigal?
Yeah. So Chris Venisi's actually a friend of mine. That's pretty
Oh, there
funny.
you go.
thanks for joining us, Chris.
Yeah.
Welcome.
He asked a good question. I think he's asked me this at a bar a couple times too. So I think that this is kind of what animates the thoughts I had about Bogarts, because you could sign Bogarts to be your third baseman and go Bogarts, Nico, Madrigal, Mervis, whoever at first base, whatever. And the fit is kind of there. And again, you're saving money theoretically to immediately deploy elsewhere on the roster. But that's kind of the only way I want to go about that. The other side is a little bit more complicated because Nico's probably not a third baseman. His arm this year was better than I thought it was going to be, but he's not a third baseman, right? And Correa is almost certainly signing to be a shortstop. Trey Turner is almost certainly signing to be a shortstop. So I don't know what you do with Madrigal because, yes, Nico is the second baseman then. Not only is he better offensively, a leader, might soon to be extended, so much more value. Yeah. He's also a elite defensive shortstop, Gold Glove finalist a couple years at second base a couple years ago, and should have been a shortstop Gold Glove finalist this year. You know what I mean? So
should have been.
Yeah, should have been.
Emphasize it.
And so if you have Correa and Nico up the middle, it outweighs the potential impact of Madrigal, even if things click. But at the same time, Nico and Correa both have injuries in their past. There's a DH available that the Cubs don't have committed to a certain spot right now. They could move maybe guys to third base on occasion. there might, and Madrigal has had tons of injuries. So it's one of those things where if you could get Correa and Nico's cool with moving to second, you get Correa and worry about the rest later. These things have a tendency to figure themselves out. So I say, yes, Madrigal gets pushed out, but I guarantee he still ends up with 400 plate appearances one way or another.
Yeah, it's going to have to be a especially if, again, he's a guy they wanted in return for Craig Kimbrell when he was at his peak in a Cubs uniform. So they obviously believed in him for something. And I think they still do. Injuries have derailed the beginning of his Cubs career, and that sucks, but I think they do still believe in him. So there has to be a scenario where if they do get Correa or Turner, whoever it is, and I would probably agree that Nico moves over to second. I know he's open to that. But this isn't the time in baseball when guys play 162 anymore. No. There's always going to be games where they're going to give Nico a day off. They're going to give whoever that shortstop is a day off. Whoever might be their main DH is going to get a day off. Like there's going to be the ability to get Nick Madrigal into the lineup some way or another, whether it's at second base when Nico needs a day off, or at second base when Nico moves to shortstop because whoever it is a day off, or they're just like, you know what, we need some contact, put him at DH.
Yeah.
That there's going to be available. So I agree, like 400 plate appearances in that situation, that rotation is still like a good scenario for Nick, especially coming off how injury riddled this last season was, and then 2021 the hamstring.
And I want to actually, you just reminded me of something. It doesn't even have to be reactive. Correa, Madrigal, and Nico all have injuries, so there will be opportunities for all three of them to play. But also, the Cubs can take a lesson out of their own playbook from last year with Contreras and how much more they rested him early on and how much immediate value that provided him offensively. If you sign Correa and you extend Nico, you might want to start thinking longer term with their bodies, their health, their longevity, and you might start scheduling their rest more frequently and consistently. And that would give the Cubs the simultaneous benefit of introducing Madrigal only in situations that are beneficial or advantageous for him because he's gotten off to a slower start. So if it kind of allows you to not kill three birds with one stone, then it makes a ton of sense. And in fact, I think as I'm talking, as I heard you go through that thought process, it's like that might be the exact plan. That actually makes a lot of sense to me.
And then that pops in my head is like, why can't Nico get a day at DH? Why can't Carlos Correa get a day at DH, even if they're not hurt?
Of course.
Just go put their bat at get them off their feet like they did with Willson a lot this year. Let them hit.
You still have Morel that could play both positions.
Yeah, that too.
Morel, and again, Contreras is gone, and there is not going to be, I'm pretty confident that he's not coming back. So until the Cubs, unless they end up getting Jose Abreu or something, there is no DH.
Yeah. How are you getting at bats for McKinstry, though? Never mind.
At first, I was like, I'm thinking so.
Hey, Chicago, you've already got the best coverage for your favorite teams, so get fitted out in the best sports gear around. Foco has you covered from Soldier Field to the living room, north side, south side, hoodies, slippers, signs, bobbleheads, everything in between. Get decked out like DeMar with apparel from the leader in sports merch and collectibles, Foco. Looking for that perfect gift for the football fan in your life? Foco's got you covered with hoodies to fight that Lake Michigan breeze. Check out Foco.com or click the link in the description below for all non-presale items. Use the promo code CHGO for 10% off.
Yeah, so we talked about the tailgate earlier, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so at the tailgate, we're going to have these awesome bag sets that were made by Chi-Town Custom Cornhole. And they're the best, guys. I like looking at them just set up here in our office.
They're like art.
Yeah.
Leaned up against the wall. They're art.
Yeah. Hashtag art. Chi-Town Custom Cornhole, the #1 cornhole provider for Chicagoland and Illinois since 2007. Our signature box style design can be digitally printed, covered in vinyl, and painted. Our cornhole boards come with built-in drink holders even, recessed in on the back. LEDs that light up on the hole, and exterior handles for easy carrying and handcrafted scorekeepers. Veteran owned and operated, we can ship anywhere and offer local pickups, specializing in corporate designs for your company's next marketing or social event, wedding gifts, and gifts for all occasions, and especially for tailgaters and backyard barbecues. Check out their website, ChitownCornhole.com, and make sure you follow them on Instagram at Chi-Town Custom Cornhole boards because apparently their account got hacked, so they had to create a new one. So
Nice. Some jerk
go
out
follow them. Yeah, they're great. I love the bag sets.
Tickets for the tailgate, allchgo.com, by the way, and I just checked my phone again. Upgraded. It's gone from 64 and sunny, now 65 and sunny.
Oh, buddy.
It's getting better
It's
better by
great.
the minute as we go on with the podcast.
It's gonna be like 80 by the time
Yeah,
it
I
gets
mean,
to Sunday.
we'll be in
Almost.
flip-flops and shorts by the time it gets going.
So we need.
We've brought up Contreras, kind of, and I'm just curious because like it's been talked about at ends. Like I'm over talking about Willson Contreras, yet here I am bringing.
Yeah, they
him up.
even say here bringing it up though.
But like, where are you? Just based off your emotions, like on like him being a Cub or not for next year. Like, are you okay if that he's on? Like, it looks like he's going to be gone unless he takes that qualifying offer. Like, just from the fan side, I guess. Like, where do you think that it's the right or wrong move that they're doing with what it seems like it's going to be?
I think a lot of Cubs fans will feel the way I feel about this. Asked me that a year and a half ago, lose my mind. Asked me that after trade deadline 2021. What else is new?
Yeah.
We already lost Rizzo, Baez, and Bryant, and everyone can rate those guys in different ways. I think Baez is probably my favorite Cub to watch in forever. They have never had a guy that cool. They haven't. He's the coolest Cub, that, in my opinion, that I've ever watched. But Rizzo, in terms of that emotional connection to the team, was like, if you can trade Rizzo, then you could trade Contreras. Let him walk in this case, you know. I would love the Cubs to get Contreras back. Frankly, I would love if Contreras accepted the 1-year qualifying offer of $19 million, because I think there would be some unique value in having him just next year for just that amount, where he can play primarily DH, catch as needed, but maybe a little bit less so that his bat plays even more, and so on. I think that would be great, but I don't think he's going to accept it. I also think that by rejecting it and attaching himself to draft pick compensation, he's going to find a very tough market out there. And maybe there's some version of this where it's January, February, and the market's coming to a close, and he returns to the Cubs on something of an under market deal for 2 or 3 years, and everyone's a little bit happier about it. But knowing what he's looking for, which is something north of what Yasmani Grandal got, but south of what JT Realmuto got, so between 80 and 115, I think it'll be closer. I think his realistic ask should be closer to 80, but he had such a great year. I think it's just the Cubs are not interested in that. I think he's not coming back. I think we have to be okay with that. I think that they have decided philosophically, organizationally, that is not the type of catcher that they want. There's arguments, for and against that, but I've come to terms with like it might not even be about the money anymore. It might not have any. That might not play any role in it. They don't want a catcher like that. I think they'd rather have Tucker Barnhart in free agency to pair with Yan Gomes or Omar Narvaez or Christian Vasquez, or trade for one of those Blue Jays catchers. They have like 3 of them that are young, and all of them are awesome.
Yeah.
I just don't think the Cubs are interested in a bat-first catcher, and that kind of sucks because I love Contreras. There's no arguing with how hard he plays, but it seems like it's over to me. It seems like it's very much over. And unfortunately, I think he's got a tough winter ahead of him if the trade deadline and his qualifying offer have any impact on that.
That's kind of like where I lean. And it's wild. I never thought that my view on Contreras' future with the Cubs would significantly change, because when we launched back in March and April Fool's came around and Luke literally tricked me into thinking that the Cubs had traded him
To the Yankees for
Cody's
3 no-name
face.
prospects.
right
He lost his mind.
to that from
His face.
that
Ingrained in my mind.
moment to like now, where I feel like it's like it will suck because of the emotional side, but from a pure baseball perspective, like I'm okay with it. I just never thought that I would feel that way, and a lot of what you just said is kind of why, because like I just don't think that any team is going to give him what he wants. And like I've said on this podcast, if the Cardinals actually do that, I will laugh. I won't be. I mean, it'll suck to see him in Cardinal red. It would suck to see him in Cardinal red, but that would not be a Cardinals move. That is not something that organization does in giving that kind of contract to someone like Contreras.
So that's why you would laugh.
I would think it would be a very bad move
inside,
for them long term. I do think it would be.
No, if they signed him, he would immediately become the greatest framer in the history of baseball.
You're right.
All of a sudden, all the pitchers are like, man, I couldn't do it without Contreras.
Yeah.
You just reminded me. I forgot about that. That is the one outcome that will truly make me enraged, inane, whatever.
Yeah. It would suck.
That would suck. And just for whatever it's worth, Derek Gould, I think it was him on the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, just wrote this whole giant article. He's like a pretty big Cardinals voice down there,
right,
about why the Cardinals need to pursue Contreras this offseason, and laid it all out. And I wrote it up, and at the end there was like this one line about how with bases expanding a little bit and also pickoff attempts being limited, there's going to be a little bit more value on catchers that can throw well, which is the one thing that Contreras absolutely can do.
Yeah, it's the one
and
thing,
it's like, again, holy crap, are we about to miss, like, it's going to be one of those things where the Cardinals just completely knock it out of the park, like getting the Rockies to pay them to take Nolan Arenado and convincing him that he doesn't have to opt out for more money because they did right by him or something stupid.
Yeah.
If they get him for pennies, it'll hurt.
Yeah.
They signed him to a huge deal, doesn't hurt as much.
No, yeah. If like
they don't do that.
No.
Right. And that's why I don't like, everyone keeps saying that it's going to happen, and like it just doesn't seem like a move that the Cardinals first off even need to do. Like they can do exactly what the Cubs are probably going to do and just get a defensive catcher. They had one of the most overrated players the last 2 decades doing it. Why not just pick up some rando on the street and do that? But like they already have the offense. They need some pitching, man, because they can't rely on Flattery anymore to be that number one guy. Like, to me, it would be a surprising move for what I have grown to know what that organization does. Like that, and it's weird to say that they need to get pitching because I feel like they've always been well at developing their own pitchers, right? But to me, like they just don't have that number one guy, and like that, if they're going to spend money, I think that they should be doing that. Because I think their offense, like I'm jealous of their offense as much as it sucks to watch, but like to have what they have on position player wise already, like I think them adding Contreras is just like cool. Like their offense would be great, but like I don't feel like it doesn't move the needle for them going into like World Series contenders.
Yeah. Well, and you know what drives me nuts along with what you're just saying about their offense is like Goldschmidt and Arenado were both available in trade and willing to extend or alter their contracts for pretty reasonable prices.
Yep. And
the trade returns were both pretty
awful.
Insignificant in both respects. And it's like Cubs could use a first baseman and a third baseman right now and last year. And like, I don't know, the Cardinals, I'm routinely impressed by their ability to trade for and extend superstars. That seems to be their MO. That's where they spend their money. They've tried to get into free agency, but it usually just doesn't work out. And then there was another deal. Remember, they traded for Giancarlo Stanton, and he just rejected it. There's no trade clause. That was another one of those.
Forgot about that.
So that's like their under the market competitive advantage. Is like you trade for these stars, and then somehow with the prospects you have left, and then you extend them. And it's like the Cubs have not had a big win long-term trade like that in a while, it feels like. And they're going to have to figure out how to do that because that's, there's international free agency, the draft, there's regular free agency, but trades are a big part of player acquisition, and the Cubs have not had a lot of success on that front in a while.
As far as like major league talent, because
it
feels like they've done well with prospects
No,
lately.
absolutely. I just mean like a big leaguer. Like they traded the first time they traded for Fowler, and then they signed him the second.
Yeah.
Miguel Montero was another guy
traded.
Those were huge additions, right, to the team, and they were big league ready right away. Helped the Cubs get to the playoffs. The Cubs haven't had one of those guys. Maybe they tried it with Madrigal, but it didn't work. They gotta win some of these trades where it's not just about trading prospects for big leaguers, and especially not just about trading prospects for big leaguers at the deadline. It's off-season trades that you could build around and coordinate the rest of your plans with around those deals. And I, frankly, think that a successful off-season is only going to be achievable if they also get one of those big trades done. There's going to spend in free agency, but they need a trade. It's got to happen somewhere. I don't know what it is yet. I really don't.
Shane Bieber.
And I think
that's one name,
Shane
right?
Bieber is the guy.
I was going to say we're up against it time-wise, but like we've all heard the names, Judge, Shohei, Turner, Bogarts, all those guys. If there's one other player that we haven't thought of that would be a good fit, you mentioned Nimmo. Like, who's the one other guy? Who's the surprise guy that we might see them trade for or...
I got a name. Free agency, though, not trade. Josh Bell.
I've seen that.
Yeah.
Josh Bell.
I'd be okay with that.
I think he would be a great fit. I think he's pretty interesting. He had a slow finish end of the year with the Padres, and I think that there's some reluctance. I think it was Keith Law was saying that reporting some reluctance from the Padres to re-sign him, but they have some space at first base open. Will Myers is finally a free agent. Josh Bell will be gone. They might go and target someone like Jose Abreu, and Josh Bell might kind of just be lingering out there. And I actually think that that's the type of guy the Cubs can go get as their secondary bat and be like, yep, this is a legitimate big league caliber bat that we're adding into the lineup, and you know what you're getting more or less out of him. It's not that he's not, he's could be streaky, but he's a good hitter, and he's a major league hitter. And I think
he's
that
left-handed.
And I think he's the kind of guy that can really add a lot, and no one's really talking about that much.
Yeah. No, I find that interesting because, like, everyone is just kind of locking in Matt Mervison at first opening day, and, like, the way that he's playing at the AFL, I'm starting to feel that way too, but, like, I just don't feel like the Cubs are going to do that. I feel like they're going to start him in Iowa, unless he just has an insane spring, right? Like, which I could clearly see it happening. Like, but either way, you can't bank on him just being that great his rookie year in the majors. It would depend on where the team is. Like, I've talked about before how when Rizzo came up, like, the Cubs were in a full on, like, you knew it was going to be at least 3 years rebuild. So that gave him time to kind of adjust and, like, get better on the fly at the major league level. Well, if the Cubs are in a complete different situation now, and it's like you got to add some major league talent, and you can't just rely on your prospects. And if you're going to call up your prospects, you have to, kind of groom them in there.
They better work out quickly.
Yeah, better, unless unless you had like a top tier blue chip like a Chris Bryant who you could just come in and plug in,
and the Cubs don't.
And they just don't. At least projections don't look like it right now, right? So, like, it is interesting, like, if you were to get a Bell but also have Mervis and having two power lefty bats when they need power lefty bats. So that's why the Abreu thing is interesting. You could platoon better because he's a right-handed hitter, but having two lefties, you can just put Mervis in DH every day if you want to give him that opportunity right away, every day at bats. But it's
I'm pulling up something here too because I thought so. So Josh Bell's a switch hitter. And
is he a switch hitter?
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
But even setting that aside,
makes me feel even better.
Yeah, exactly. But not only so, obviously Mervis lefty. I wanted to make sure that these numbers are right, but he's been better against fellow lefties. So as a righty, the last 2 years, Josh Bell has. So he fits in with Mervis even better, than because you can sort of ease Mervis into that role. Because again, I mean, are we all losing our minds that we think Mervis is just definitely going to be good? Like, he's awesome. He's had an insane year. I love him. I think he's probably going to be good. But to say, like, he's definitely going to be good and next year is insane. I mean, we all watch baseball, right? Like, it's hard. The best players on the planet struggle for whole years at a time, let alone breaking into the big leagues for the first time. And, I don't think that
Mike Trout got demoted.
Yeah, there you go. Anthony Rizzo, terrible first, season with the Padres. Like,
Ian Happ got demoted, now he's going to win the Gold Glove in like an hour.
It all comes around.
There we go.
Right.
So anyway, I just think that Josh Bell could be one of those guys that fits with him and immediately impacts the lineup.
I didn't know he's a switch hitter, so that actually now I feel dumb for talking. So
No, I had to Google it because I was like, wait a minute, is he?
There you go.
But yeah.
They definitely have to have another guy with Mervis. Yeah. There's no way you can go into next season with just Mervis and
you forgot the D I just gave Rivas on his report card.
Yeah. It's still technically passing, man.
Hey, this has been fun. Thanks for coming by. Really appreciate it. We stop by again?
I would love to. That was a blast.
Michael Cerami from
Chicago, he's got to get in.
That's true. At Bleacher Nation,
stand behind him, like
just peek over the wall. At Bleacher Nation, Michael_Cerami, CERAMI. Anything else you want to promote real quick?
No.
We just hope you'll do it again. And thanks for checking out the CHGO Cubs podcast presented by DraftKings, America's top-rated sportsbook. Until Wednesday, when Patrick Mooney from The Athletic will join us. We'll see you then. Fly the W.
I didn't know we were doing that.
I usually dab.